Welcome to Stories and Songs by Afterglow Music. My name is Joel McCausland.
And I'm Kevin Peay, and we've been creating music for a long time.
We'd like to tell you the stories behind our songs. You know, normally we use these podcasts to tell a story behind a particular song. Like, where'd it come from and why does it mean something to us? And today we thought it might be a good idea for us to harken back to the very beginning and talk a little bit about where Afterglow came from.
No, I'm liking this.
Yeah, some of the history, some of the experiences we've had together over the last 40 or 50 years.
We're going to stretch. I got to go back into my brain. Wow.
We get some questions from time to time. People ask us, how did Afterglow get started, or how many people are in Afterglow? When did you start singing together? Some of those questions. So we thought we'd just sort of take some of those questions one at a time and talk through them today.
How many people are in Afterglow? Last I knew, there were 2.
Far as I know, there's only 2. Let me pick one up here. That one question is, how long have you two known each other? Kev, what are you?
I remember Unified Math, 7th grade, Pleasant Grove Junior High, Mr. Fielding's class. And when I sat by Joel, I just knew he had brains. And so I didn't have very many brains. And so I thought, I'm going to sit close to this guy so maybe some of it will rub off. And then we went into the band together. I remember Mr. Hollis, him being our band person, and I decided I was going to play the trombone, and I think you were playing the bassoon.
Yeah, Kevin had the cool instrument. He had the trombone, and I had to figure out what to do with the bassoon. That lasted 2 or 3 years.
The bassoon was amazing. And I always remember you playing that bassoon, and I'm thinking, what is that instrument? It looks like a log. But it was the coolest sound that came out of it. My trombone days were, they were short-lived, and we went through the junior high experience, and then I decided I was going to go into the marching band at Pleasant Grove High School as a freshman.
Yeah, I did a little of that too, but I switched because it's really not a good idea to play a bassoon in the marching band. I tried it once, and the reeds just cut your lips up because you're marching along. So I switched over to the sousaphone, the tuba, basically. And I could stand on the back row and carry the big tuba around and have a good time with that. So it was fun. I didn't do a lot of marching band, but what I did was fun.
Well, what I remember is that the summer we were freshmen. We go to the high school, so we were going to be 4 years in Pleasant Grove High School. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to try this marching band thing. And then I get with Chester Stone, who was the music director at Pleasant Grove High School, and we're out doing some routines on the asphalt. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? I really want to play baseball. I want to play basketball. I want to do something. But anyway, I thought I'll stick with it. And then we're doing this routine, and I did this little left, right, up and down, and all of a sudden the slide on the trombone left its security place, and it smashed the back end of that trombone right on the asphalt. And I tried to blow that trombone from then on out, but it wouldn't do anything. And that was my sign. It was my sign to give the trombone
to get out of marching band.
Out of marching band, and the rest was history.
Yeah, I had my experience with that is, I don't know if everybody remembers this, but marching band uniforms used to be made out of heavy wool. And I'm sure that was part of making them last a long time. But they were the hottest things in the world. And you go out there on the 4th of July and you're marching in 95-degree heat in a wool sweater, basically what it was, carrying a sousaphone. I did that for one summer, and that was about enough.
So I remember as we went through that process and the marching band, and I started getting into the athletics, this, that, and the other. I think it was we kind of tagged, said hello in the high school.
Everybody,
some of that stuff.
Everybody knew everybody. We were all pretty good friends.
You were doing music and drama and some of that stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out this baseball thing, this basketball thing. And I remember we got to our junior year, and I finished practice and was coming down the hall, and I don't know the whole. I can't remember the full version of this, but I think it had something to do with metal cleats and tile floors.
If I remember right, you were being chased down the hall by the janitor who didn't think metal cleats were a good idea on the tile floors.
Now, that wasn't necessarily on purpose. I was just lazy. But anyway, I took my cleats off after he made sure that I did, and I was headed down the hall, and I could hear some music coming out of the auditorium. And so I opened the door, and there you were. You're in there playing the piano and playing a song by, I think, Eric Carmen.
Yeah.
All by myself or
right?
something like that.
Yep.
And so I think, if I remember correctly, you said something about come on in.
Yeah.
And what else happened after that?
Well, I was all by myself. I was in there all by myself playing the song, and I was thinking that might be fun to do on an assembly or something like that. So it was cool. You came in, you started to sing. They're kind of a natural fit with the harmony. It just kind of seemed to come pretty easy. And after singing the song maybe 2 or 3 more times, I think we felt like possibly if we could get over the terror of having to sing in front of the school, the student body.
Because you were doing an assembly.
Yeah. Yep.
And you invited me to come?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All by myself.
Don't want to be all by myself
Anymore.
It was something like that. Yeah, so it's, I think we had that moment of deciding if that's something we really wanted to do, is put ourselves out in front of everybody. And we practiced that song and then had a chance to do it for the assembly. And it turned out okay.
Well, it turned out okay from your perspective. But from my perspective, all the athletes were sitting on the left side as I was looking down, and there was just laughter and pointing of fingers and all kinds of goofy stuff that was going on down there. Because back in those days, it was like, I don't think this athletic thing and this music thing really works for you up there on stage, Mr. Peay. Mm-hmm. But one thing led to another, and something just said, go for it. So we did it, and it was fun.
It was a good decision, good start to things.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. And then it was interesting because a few of those athletes decided they were going to show up in choir the next year. Mm-hmm. And we kind of broke that barrier, I think, over the course of time, that you could play ball and you could sing. Mm-hmm. So that was a real eye-opening thing for me.
We get asked sometimes. I'm just looking through some of these other questions we've been asked. Other things that we did at the time with our music. How did we kind of get started? Of course, there was the assembly, and that was cool. But what came after that?
You were singing at restaurants. I think you were doing some stuff to make some money.
A little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, how did we figure out how to get to a place called Old Dan Tucker's in Orem?
Yeah, I think that was something we'd kind of looked into. People had, they had live entertainment a couple of nights a week, and typically that was a guy on a stool playing a guitar and singing songs, or my thing was more playing the piano. So we talked to him and asked if we could try that out a little bit. And before long, this was probably in our senior year, or maybe about the time we were graduating even, we started doing that. There was a place called, what was that place called? Jimba's. Down on Main Street in Provo.
You were flying
Center
solo
Street in Provo.
down there, yeah.
So did that a little bit, and then, of course, Old Dan Tucker's, and we got a chance to kind of just sit there for 2 or 3 hours a night, put a little jar out on the top of the piano, and you always had to prime the pump. You had to put $1 or $2 in there right at the beginning so people knew what it was for, and then maybe they'd drop by after dinner and drop a couple of bucks in there. Yeah, not like we were ever going to get rich doing that, but led to some other things, and it was kind of fun.
I remember we were sitting there one night, and Donnie and Marie came in for dinner. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my, this is going to be interesting. And we went through it, and they didn't say anything, and they walked out the door.
They were very impressed, I'm sure.
Yeah. I remember when we were singing at Old Dan Tucker's, and a person came up and asked us if we would consider ever coming out and sing to his youth group.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Mr. Hawley from Alpine. And so you and I decided, well, what should we call ourselves? And if I remember correctly, we walked outside the restaurant one night. I can't remember what time period that was. We saw this beautiful afterglow of a sunset. Mm-hmm. And we thought, we need a name. So maybe it's kind of one of those things that sunset is reflecting, and kind of the end of the day, and thought-provoking, this, that, and the other. And we came to find out that is a glow remaining in a world where light has disappeared, a reflection of past emotion. Mm-hmm. And that was defined by Webster. And so we thought, maybe we ought to keep that. So therefore, we had a name.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good. That was kind of the beginning of something for us, too, because it seems like after that, we did this one thing. We really didn't know a lot of what I would say church music. There wasn't a lot of it around. We hadn't really started writing yet.
The Quest.
Yeah, just a few things from seminary programs and others. And so
Saturday's Warrior.
We kind of pulled a couple of things together and put together a program to do that for Brother Hawley. And then it started to, people called and somebody said, hey, can you do a fireside for this group? Or can you come and sing in our sacrament meeting? And we had about a year after we got out of high school before we left on our missions. And during that time, man, we got busy doing that. It was like, I remember some months when we were doing a sacrament meeting and a fireside every week, and it, 7, 8, 9 performances a month, and it got pretty busy. And that was maybe, for me anyway, that was kind of when I started thinking we might be able to do something with this. We might want to continue to try to make this grow and do some things. It was an interesting time. We didn't have a whole lot of other things going on, going to school maybe and working a little bit, and plenty of opportunity to see what we could do with the music.
Well, and I'm still trying to play baseball at that point in time too, and it was a great point in our lives where we started to make some decisions about missions at that point in time, and then eventually we moved forward with that. Mm-hmm. And you got a call to?
I got called to Tokyo North Mission, and we ended up in the MTC together. You were going to
Missouri St. Louis Mission. And then I remember when we got in the MTC together, somehow Joe Christensen, President Christensen, found out that we'd made a couple of tapes before we'd left. And that was a story unto itself in regards to these funny little tapes that we made. And we put this little Afterglow, and we put a drawn sunset on it. And we called one To Our Friends and another one called A Worship and Song. And we thought, well, we're just going to leave those for our friends and our family, and if anybody cares, that's great.
Yeah.
And I remember President Christensen called me into the office, I think that day, and said, I heard you guys have got a tape. He said, can I hear it? And I said, sure. So we summoned some tapes, and he listened to it, and he said, well, let's put those in the bookstore. And all of a sudden, they went to different parts of the world. And lo and behold, we started to sing a little bit in the MTC and did a 10-day meeting and some of those things. And I think, did we sing when President Kimball came?
Yeah, we might address this at another time too, in another episode, because it's a really great story. But actually, it was cool for me that day. I remember being in that big meeting hall, and we were there over the holidays. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think this was Christmas Day.
Yes, it was.
So there was this rumor going around that we were going to get a guest from Salt Lake City on Christmas. And I know they were trying to do something for us. We're there on a holiday. In fact, I was there on both Thanksgiving and Christmas and for that matter, New Year's that year. And they were trying to do something special, but they didn't really tell us what was going on, I don't think. But they did ask us to sing.
With some wonderful sisters that were there as well, too.
That's right. Yeah. So we were going to sing, and I just remember the one moment for me that was powerful. So I'm sitting in the audience, and we're getting ready for this. And I think the meeting had probably already begun. It's kind of an odd thing, but the back door to the meeting, the big hall there, opened up, and the light came in. It was kind of dim inside, but it was bright day outside, and President Kimball walked in that door. Mm. And for me, that was honestly a testimony moment. I mean, I knew, we had a prophet and all those things, but I hadn't really thought about it very deeply prior to that. And when he walked in the door in that environment, in that moment, it was powerful.
It was.
And I just got a really strong witness that he was God's prophet. And, the thing that's been cool about that for me since then is because of that day, because of what it taught me about him, every time we've had a prophet since then, I've had the same feeling. I've had the same witness. And I think it comes from that. It was like that secured the knowledge that that's what happens, that when one prophet goes, we have another one. And that it was really powerful. I've never forgotten it. It was fun to sing. It was a cool experience, but that moment, just from my own personal experience and testimony, that was amazing for me. Our last year of high school, we got introduced to a song called I Heard Him Come. And wow, what a powerful influence that song has had on us for all these years. And that was the song we chose to sing in that meeting at the MTC when President Kimball was there. And many of the people who've listened to our music probably know us best by this song, better by this one than maybe anything else we've ever done. So maybe it'd be okay to listen to a little piece of it right now.
And he said, nations fall behind him, the rivers crawl to find him, mountains move just to let him through. Come and never leave him, just let your heart believe him, and never let his light go. Never let his light go. Never let your love grow
McCausland, you're bringing back some of those memories that are starting to rekindle what I felt that day as well. And then we take off, and you go to Japan, and I go to St. Louis, and we all of a sudden we hear at some point in time in our missions that there's going to be a new announcement, and that elders were going to stay for 18 months now rather than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was a defining moment for me, because my mission president called me in and said, "What are you going to do?" And then I think that was, for some reason, you and I had some communication about what are you going to do.
Yeah, I think we went back and forth a bit through
We
letters.
did, and you're in Japan and I'm in St. Louis, and we both determined we're going to stay for the 2 years. There's not really an option for us. And then when we get home, it's an interesting time when you come home off of a mission. And we did find out that those tapes that President Joe Christensen had decided to let happen with inside the MTC found their way out to different parts of the world. And I remember we started to get some communication back from people who had found that, a worship in song, which was a storyline of the plan of salvation. And it was like, oh, okay, well, there's enough money here. We could probably fund some other projects and do some other things, because you had written some stuff, I'd written some stuff on my mission, and we put some new stuff together. And in 1983 was born Someone Is Listening.
First real album. Like you said, the worship and song was almost like a fireside recorded. We talked and we sang, and you can hear the piano bench squeak in the background and the pedal. It's kind of crazy. It's not the best production, but we did that one in my Aunt Judy's living room on her piano. So it was fun and it was great, and it started things off. And like you said, we had the opportunity then to kind of take those resources and create an album in a studio and work with some professional people and make it a little better.
And our first studio was in Columbia Lane down in Provo. And lo and behold, this man by the name of Lauren Ashcraft, we got connected with him somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And for our listeners out there, you're going to be really interested to know, because Lauren is actually engineering this podcast right now.
That's right.
And
long history.
We've come full circle in regards to that. And we could have a whole discussion in regards to Lauren making reverbs and fixing buttons and things to make this whole work. But that cool part of that coming together and the culmination of our relationship being born with Lauren, Afterglow then has the opportunity then to move forward. And he's been with us for a long time through that process of the early days of Afterglow. And it's really cool to have him here with us today.
Absolutely. It certainly is. You know, one of the questions we get asked, like we mentioned it a bit ago, is, you know, what is Afterglow? Who's in it? And it's just been you and I, Kev, the whole time. But we've also, and maybe to this point, we've had opportunity to work with some of the very best. Lauren is certainly one of them. We were just a minute ago trying to figure out where a little noise was coming from in the room here, and he's the only one who could hear it. And that's exactly the kind of expertise he's brought to our projects. But we've had opportunities to sing with some of the people, or perform with some of the people that many people in this area know. I remember a night we did a special Forgotten Carols concert with Michael McLean up in Ogden, and just had a marvelous experience. Full orchestra. Lauren was there that night, and Merrill Jensen helped us with the orchestra, and we just really have had some amazing and wonderful experiences. Here's a little clip from that first album.
Someone is listening when you call. Just ask and he will understand. Someone is watching when you fall. Reach out and he will give his hand. When comforting words you do not hear, be still and you will know someone is near. When darkness falls and you cannot see, he'll show the way, just ask on bended knee.
After that first album, Someone Is Listening, and that recording, it found its way through distribution and somehow, some way Deseret Book decided to come and call us to sing at a breakfast. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
And after that breakfast,
Was that an audition? Was that a test?
I don't know, but I remember it was in the Hotel Utah, and we sang for that breakfast. And all of a sudden, Rick Bingham, who was one of the executives at Deseret Book, came up to us and said, "Would you two be willing to let us do your next project?" And so we said, "Oh, okay, that would be kind of fun." And so they did. They took, in 1984, they took The Greatest Gift, and we produced that. And then down the road, Sherry Dew and Ron Millett and Gary Swap and a bunch of those wonderful executives at Deseret Book put some effort into us to be able to record some music, write some songs, do some compilations, different things, and did I think 17 projects with Deseret Book over the course of time.
Yeah, about 20 years, really,
Yeah.
of time together with them.
Yeah.
Here's a little clip from that album.
It's the greatest gift the world has known, for the Savior to come down and guide us home. A single heartfelt plea as he said, "Come follow me." He taught us all the way back home and lived it perfectly.
You know, another thing that was kind of cool at that time, I hadn't really thought about it until you were just saying that, but prior to that time, prior to the early 80s maybe, there wasn't a whole lot in terms of what I would say LDS music, LDS contemporary music. You know, you had Mormon Tabernacle Choir, you had a lot of other things going on at the time, but you know, with the exception of a little bit of maybe Lex D'Azevedo and Janice Cat Perry, there wasn't the numbers and the talent level that there is today. And that was probably good for us. It gave us an opportunity when there wasn't a whole lot of competition maybe. But I do remember one of the things that group did that was so cool. They used to do an LDS artist concert every year.
The Night of Stars.
Yeah, typically at a Bravenel Hall, there at the concert hall in Salt Lake. And those were some of the most fun. You know, I didn't know a lot of the people before those, and you'd hear about a new album that came out and you'd maybe listen to a cut and think, "Oh man, that's so great, such great talent." And then a few months later, a few weeks later, you have a chance to actually perform with those people. They do a little piece, you do a piece, maybe you do an ending number together. And those have kind of gone the way of the world, I guess. But man, for about 7, 8, 9 years, it seems like we'd go down to Bravenel Hall every summer. There was a concert that was held in conjunction with the Booksellers Convention there in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And man, we had some great times. Got to know some wonderful people.
I remember after that, for some reason that eventually went its own way. And then we pretty well, a little bit, maybe ran out of things to write and do. And we kept getting some people asking us to come and do some of our material in a country setting, in a county fair, and we're like, "Oh, let's see. I wonder how that's going to go over with some of the songs we've written in that little bit of a genre." So we decided that maybe our roots were a little more country, and we thought, well, let's go do some country, and let's do some positive country. And so anyway, we had an opportunity to go to Deseret Book and actually ask them if they'd be interested, and they did. And they, under their Shadow Mountain, they sent us to Nashville, and we had a wonderful experience there and did 2 projects, and we changed the name a little, confused everybody, called McCausland and Peay and spelled it different. But anyway, we had a great experience through the Nashville experience and wrote some country songs and had some wonderful country songs given to us. And we finally had some material to go on a stage at a county fair and not feel awkward about it. So and a lot of that is still out there, and we've rebranded it back into Afterglow, and that was a wonderful experience over the course of time.
Yeah, you know, I think about the Nashville experience. We got to record in L.A. We went to London a couple of times, and actually some of those really deserve their own. They deserve their own episode. There's some really cool stories that we'll have to have some time to tell. But there are people that we really should recognize. There are people that have been significant in the whole process for us over the years. Of course, our families have always been good in supporting us and trying to help us do the music and putting up with us when we're doing late night sessions or running around the country performing. We talked about Lauren, who's just been instrumental in so much of our work. And we've had a couple of arrangers that have been, gosh, they helped us define a sound. You know, you got Merrill Jensen, who did so much of this great orchestral stuff. He's the one who sort of drove what we did in London and went with us on that trip. And then you got a guy like Greg Hansen, who helped us with a unique look at hymns later on in our work. And that was pretty cool. Kenny Hodges was always finding us places to record and people to connect with. And
especially in the country world.
yeah, he had a lot of contacts in Nashville and probably was instrumental in getting a lot of the songs that we ended up putting on those 2 albums that were more country focused.
Yeah. And then we had the opportunity to translate some of those songs into Japanese and some of those songs into Portuguese, and spent some time in Japan on 2 opportunities. And then we had the opportunity to go to Brazil and go down, and that's probably a whole nother episode unto itself.
Probably worth an episode on just the travels and seeing where we've been.
And being able to sing some of those. Of course, you know Japanese, but it was a little bit interesting for me to be able to read it and phonetically try and do the best I could on stage and even in the recording studio. And the same with Portuguese. And we're grateful for all those that helped us through those experiences as well.
You know, I was just thinking, it's impossible to start talking about people, all these great professionals who are way better than we are at music. Whether they arrange or write or produce, their skill set's way above mine. But at the risk of maybe missing some people that were important, there's a couple of people I would absolutely mention. Even today, when we sit down to do an album, the people we call, Mike Dowdle and Brett Raymond, every single time we want to do a song, you know, Brett comes in and plays the piano for us, and Mike comes in and plays guitar and lays down the basis for a song. And it doesn't matter what the song is or where we're recording, we know we can count on those 2 guys to come in and just take the basic song that we always write and make it 100% better right off the bat. And then we can call on other people that come in and help us with the sweetening or the other things we do. So we'll get a chance as we do more of these opportunities to talk more detail about some of the people that have really helped us along the way. But gosh, I don't want to miss those 2, because it seems like every song I've ever written, Mike's been over there playing guitar and Brett's been playing the piano on it or the keyboard of some kind. And that's just made a whole difference in the music we've done.
And so many others, especially those that have been in the studio. The Platinum Group, Barry Gibbons and Michael Gibbons and all of those that have helped us along the way in the studio as well. It's interesting as you talk about we and writing. I don't think I've ever written a song with you.
Yeah, and that's kind of weird, isn't it? Like, there have been times when we've walked into the studio to record a song and one of us has not heard it, ever. Like, Kevin says, I got this song, you know, I got a song I can share. That's great. The trust level has grown over the years that even if it's something we know is going to go permanently on an album, it's great. You know?
Well, and you got to know that Joel writes by inspiration. Kevin writes by desperation. and there were, I remember specifically, I was trying to come up with a song and we were at Bonneville Studios and Lauren was the engineer and I was missing a song. I needed to write another song. And I think that song it came probably about 3 hours before the session went down. We hurried and wrote it out, figured it out, and got it in that studio session. And you taught me early on about how to do chord progressions.
Just basic. Playing chords on piano. That's
basic.
And that's still all I can do is basic chords on the piano.
Well, your chords are like, 500. My chords are like 3. And so your music and your family and all the things that you've done in regards to the expansion of your music and your talent of your family and what you do is just amazing. And me, I just came from kind of a hacker version of this thing, but I'm grateful for you to have taught me a few basic chords to be able to write a few melodies under some structure. And so it's interesting that, I don't think we've ever collaborated on a song.
No, there's once in a while there might be an opportunity to suggest a word change or a chord change, but more often that's come from the people around us anyway. It's the guys who are playing the studio session who say, hey, this would sound better if you changed this to that, or if you just did a little different thing with the lyric in this place. So we've no question, we've certainly been blessed. And, for both of us starting out without much real education or knowledge about music. We're not really good at theory or composition or anything else, but if we can write and then perform the things that matter to us, and really, that's kind of what drives this whole thing for me. This opportunity even to talk about it in a podcast is to say we've been blessed and we've been affected in really positive ways through our lives by the music we've had an opportunity to do and by the people that have surrounded us. And to me, that's enough reason to sit here and kind of reminisce and talk about the stuff that's allowed us to do this work over the years.
Well, and Afterglow's meant so much to me in regards to, even though we've never really done this as a full-time venture. We've always had outside ventures to do. Music has been for me more of recreation and more of an outlet as it pertains to something to go to decompress, to have this wonderful opportunity to be able to share with family and be able to share with friends. I mean, it's meant so much. I mean, our lives have been, coincided for many, many years, 1975 to now. And Afterglow starts in 1978, roughly. And so here we're talking about 45 years. But, I mean, our kids were born on the same day.
That's such a crazy thing. Like, what are the chances, really? It's not like there was any coordination or planning. And we find out Sydney's pregnant and Kelly, my wife, was pregnant at the time. And we knew the due dates were pretty close. And then the time comes and one of them's a little early and one of them's a little late. And I think it was Josh was born in the middle part of the day. And a few hours later, Brittany came along. And it's just kind of an amazing thing. And what's kind of crazy, too, is that our last kids were born on the same day. I had a few more in between there than you did. And they were born not on the same exact day, but on the same date, a couple years apart. So your daughter Megan and my daughter Brenna share a birthday just like Josh and Brittany do. So lots of cool things that have happened over the years. And the experiences are too many to mention here. But that's great because hopefully we'll have an opportunity through some of these podcasts to dive into some of those and talk a little bit more about all the ways we've been blessed by this music and by the affiliation together.
One of the songs that you wrote called Teddy Bear Corner, I really, really love.
There's a story behind that one too, and we might do an episode of the podcast on that song sometime. But for now, here's a little piece.
I'm spending time tonight with all those memories. Guess I'm holding on too tight. Can I learn to set you free? Will you come down to Teddy Bear Corner? Can we step back in time? I'm going back to Teddy Bear Corner, back to the time when you climbed on my knee, back to the days you were mine.
Well, I've really appreciated the opportunity just to be able to talk through this and to be able to have so many memories and to be able to feel again a lot of the things that we've talked about, where we were and where we've been and where we're going. And we are going places. We are still writing, doing some of those things. And so we hope now that if you decide to tune into the podcast at some point in time and we talk about future songs and we talk about things that we've done in the past as well as what we're going to do in the future, and that you'll enjoy the journey with us.
I've said more times than I can count when we've had a chance to speak or, gosh, even talks in church, whatever. I always reflect on the fact that most of the most powerful spiritual experiences in my life have had to do with music in one way or another. Whether it was my mom making music a part of our home when she was a single mom raising 6 kids, or what's happened since then with you and I. I think about almost every powerful moment in my life from a spiritual perspective had some musical component to it. And I don't know if that's true for everybody, but I suspect it's true for a lot of us, that there's power in those moments when music sort of touches our soul. And that, for me, was really why this podcast seemed like a good idea, a fun idea for us, for sure, because we get a chance to go down memory lane, but hopefully to help people reflect on moments like that in their lives, when music has meant something to them from a spiritual perspective. And we've tried to focus on that through the work we've done together, and that's been a powerful experience.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
That's our episode today. We thank you for joining us.
We hope that you'll join with us again soon.